So if you guys remember a while back, I said I really didn't care too much for doing tour videos of vehicles just because there were so many on YouTube. But today, this one I'm doing for a different reason, and it's because it's my first operational diesel. I had another diesel truck years ago. It was kind of a project. I'll explain more about that toward the end of this video, but let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm driving these days. It's a nice truck. Well, it's a work truck, but still a nice truck. So here it is, and for you subscribers that follow me on Facebook, you've known about this truck for a while, but this is going to be my first YouTube video of it. But it is a 2000 Ford, obviously, F-450 Dually, and like as I mentioned before, it's the diesel, which means it has the International 7.3 PowerStroke. Well known, well loved, because quite honestly this thing, I consider it a beast of an engine, but it's also just flat out reliable and simple and pretty durable, honestly. It is an XL model, basically the work truck model. It started out with manual windows, but the previous owner put in an aftermarket kit to give it power windows and locks. But beyond that, pretty interior. This ain't no XOT or King Ranch. I can't even remember if the King Ranch was out in 2000. But things like that, it's just your typical work model. I mean, heck, this truck is so basic, it doesn't even have AC. Quite honestly, I'm glad I came out. I forgot I left the car charger plugged in. AM, FM radio. Like I said, plain Jane on the interior. I mean, back seat's obviously a little blown up and worn out, but it's still there. So, my particular truck, which makes it hard to believe, but this thing is only at 118,000 miles. It had, I think it was in the high 116s when I picked it up, maybe even the 115s, I can't quite remember. But it's a really good truck. I got it, I want to say a little over halfway through July, if I remember right. It had to have been halfway through July at least. There'll be the beast of the motor, the 7.3, if I can keep the hood up anyway. So, do a cold start for you guys here in a second, or relative cold start. I think it feels like it's in the 60s or the 70s today, but this truck's been sitting since last night, so almost 24 hours now. Like I said, I picked up the truck in July. I really haven't had to do a whole lot to it. Most of the work's been back here. It had two tires that apparently were really bad on it back here on the back axle. So I just decided to replace them with new tires. These are Road Warriors, if I'm not mistaken. But the only other mishap was, and it was on this side, the only other mishap was the back caliper on this side locked up and basically wore the pad and the rotors on that side down to middle to middle. Really haven't had to do much else to this thing, quite honestly, besides replace the batteries and the alternator. So there's that. I mean, they look a little funky, but they are in-the-state batteries. The rated cold cranking amps on these are, I think they're 750, but when I tested them, when I bought them, they were still putting out over 1,000, so decided to run with them. So I think I'll run with that for a little while at least. I had to replace the alternator too. The alternator itself didn't fail. I think the voltage regulator failed, and I think it was starting to create an overcharge condition. So I'm kind of wondering sometimes if that's what took the old batteries. Beyond that, really haven't had to do much else to the truck. Replaced the air filter. Some Bright Star, I think, overfilled the transmission because for a while I just noticed it was kind of peeing transmission fluid when it warmed up. and I checked the dipstick, and it said it was basically too full, so I just basically drained the fluid and refilled it to the correct level, and been fine ever since. It does have a real slow oil leak. I think it's coming out of the turbo pedestal low. So that's kind of on my to-do list a little bit down the road. I am the third owner of this truck. First owner was, I forget what company it was, but it was the company that ordered it. They ordered the utility box and put the ladder rack up here on it. Of course, the truck started its life as a chassis cab. The second owner, he said he bought it at an auction, and he just realized it was a bit too much truck for him, and he basically traded me this truck for my 05 Dodge that I had. You guys might remember that, and I gave him a little bit of cash, but not too much. I mean, it was just honestly a deal I really couldn't pass up, in my opinion, and I really have no regrets. I mean, honestly, the only time this thing really let me down was when the batteries basically went, and it was one of those things where they went in between paydays, so the truck was down for a couple of days because of that. But no complaints so far. Surprisingly, it doesn't really, it's kind of a bear to start up when it's cold, but I'm not sure if it's glow plugs or if it's just a fuel injector that isn't happy when it's cold. That's kind of another project I'm going to have to work on here soon. Two-wheel drive, not sure if I mentioned that. Dually. Go ahead and give her a start so you guys can hear. Give her a walk around real quick. Still hard to believe this thing only has 118 on the clock. I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So here recently they've had us do diesel emissions, and this thing basically passed with flying colors. So usually on cold starts, I'll cycle my glow plugs about 3 times before I start the truck. Roll down the window a bit so you guys can hear the engine a bit more. Here we go. It kind of does this for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, and it will settle out like it's doing now to its idle. So like I said, I'm not sure if it's weak glow plugs. I did test the relay. The relay's good. Glow plugs I think were anywhere between 0.2 and 0.5 ohms on the resistance. The only other thing I can tell you is I know from experience, until this thing's warmed up for a few minutes, it doesn't like to accelerate. I mean, I hate to say it about this truck, but when she's cold and like you try and take off, like you start her up cold and you try and take off, it's just a dog. I mean, you do good to see 15-20 miles an hour out of her within the first minute. So I'm not exactly sure if it's an engine issue or the transmission issue, but once she warms up, she's great. But I mean, some people will be intimidated to drive something like this, especially as a daily, but I'm not. I mean, it's just, I definitely have to, I usually kind of, my wife calls it parking out in the back 40 when I do park. But go ahead and flip on the lights and do one more walk around and call it a day on this thing. I think this is my first truck with the overhead cab lights too. So like I was saying at the beginning of this video, this is my first operational diesel. Operational being that it's basically a daily driver that I'm not having to work on every day just to keep it being the daily driver. Years ago, it seems like years ago now, I think it was 2011, 2012, I had like a 84 F-450 with the 6.9 IDI, and that thing was more or less of a project truck just because I was on a much tighter budget back then. I was only working part-time, and that truck just needed a lot of help. It needed batteries, an alternator. I think it needed the whole glow plug system reworked, and honestly, that truck was probably just wore out. But this is, like I said, it's my first operational diesel. I mean, I've had to do a few little list of acts to it already, but most of it is just needed maintenance. I really enjoy driving it. I mean, I enjoy the sound this thing makes and how it runs and drives. Just like I said, it took me a while to get used to the acceleration. I think something else I'm going to do in the near future is just drop the fuel tank and take a look at those inline filters. I call them inline filters. I guess you can also call them in-tank filters. Just to make sure they're not clogged, because I know that can be a common issue on these 7.3s. But I think that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm not even sure if they call it rig anymore. I guess it's like, dislike, I don't know. But as always, comments and subscriptions are definitely welcome. Hope you guys are having a great week, weekend, night, day, whatever time it is, wherever you're at. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.